Yeah. So I ask because I've worked for some of these big nonprofits, and the one thing I learned, and I learned this from other fundraisers, I learned this from former directors and staff at nonprofits. Most of the big brand name NGOs, nonprofit organizations, do not want to succeed. And
Couldn't agree more.
I remember talking to a guy who had quit, and he said that he quit because it seemed at a certain point that they intentionally wanted to make the problems worse. And he was like, I think it was because if they solve the problem, they're out of business. Mm-hmm. You know, with the private sector, you have the planned obsolescence, which is similar in a way. They say that with the invention of the light bulb, the original filament invented for the light bulb essentially lasted forever. And the first light bulb, I believe, is still on to this day in a firehouse in New York City. That's what they say. And they decided, you know what, we need a filament that burns out so we can keep selling these things. You know, a candle burns down, got to buy a new one. Mm-hmm. We give them a light bulb that lasts for 20 years. We sell 10 light bulbs, we're done. Mm-hmm. So they intentionally fail. Mm-hmm. You see the same thing with nonprofits. They say, if we get this banned, then what do we do? Mm-hmm. So you do see in some instances, I went without naming any of these nonprofits, maybe they start with, nuclear weapons testing is bad, because it's radiation is blanketing the earth. And so they start protesting this. A lot of people agree and say, you're going to wipe the planet out if you keep doing these bomb testing. So they protest these things. And then eventually when the tests start dying down and they start succeeding in a certain respect, they say, well, now what do we do? I know. Let's throw in whales because the nuclear testing was harming the whale population. Then they say, well, now that whaling is mostly being made, what would you do? Trees. There's always got to be something we're fighting for. Now, I can respect to a certain extent if they're like, hey, we've solved this problem. Now we're going to announce that we're going to carry on the mission. But then you start to learn that some of the policies that they fight for, these nonprofits, don't actually stop these problems. I've seen it with a bunch of these big organizations. They don't want to go out of business. And so it's almost like, we had a Republican Freedom Caucus guy on who explained to us that when they were going to overturn Obamacare, Republican leadership said, hey, don't vote yes. Like, wait, why? We have a chance to actually be rid of Obamacare. Yeah, but we need this to raise money. Yep, you lose the issue. I don't know if you've experienced things like that with other nonprofits or.
I have a few thoughts on this. I think there's something to what you're saying about losing the issue. But, when you look at why I founded this organization, I was very frustrated with the lack of progress on animal testing. This could explain why the labs weren't being shut down. In the United States, not a single primate lab was shut down. Outside of the White Coat Waste Project, not a single primate lab has been shut down for the better part of a decade. Wow. Zero, despite establishment groups raising tons of money on it. So either they don't want to put them out of business or they're incompetent and failing the approach. Both are unacceptable, whether they don't want, whether they just don't want to lose the issue and are not trying, or they are trying and failing.
Didn't PETA kidnap a dog from some woman's porch and then kill it?
That scandal. I mean, it's been, it's troubling. It's a little above my pay grade. I don't know. I know a little bit about the.
Don't get yourself in legal trouble. I'll pull it up right here.
About the.
PETA says sorry for taking girl's pet chihuahua and putting it down.
Yeah, I'm not an expert on the euthanasia issue. It's a little above my pay grade, but I've heard the disturbing story, the headline, but it's not it's a little above my pay grade, but it's the real scandal to me is just why did the animal test, the real scandal is why aren't labs getting shut down by establishment animal groups?
They can take someone's dog, but they can't stop actual wasteful animal labs and cruel animal labs.
I started this organization out of nowhere a few years ago, and I shouldn't have had to. Right? This issue is old. Animal testing is an old problem in the United States. It goes back to the Reconstruction in the 19th century. It goes back a minute, Okay. This has been on the public radar for a long time. Animal testing is not new. The issue is not new, but we came up with a new way to look at an old issue. I shouldn't have had to do that. And I was very frustrated, Tim. And after working in an animal lab, I wanted to do something about it. I could have gone and worked for an establishment group. I didn't want to because they weren't doing a great job on this issue. On the one hand, if you look at the public opinion polling, public support for animal testing hit an all-time low, right? Public opinion was moving in the right direction. Down, 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 down. They weren't supporting this stuff. But on the other hand, the number of kills in these animal labs was going up, 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 up. Think about that.
That sounds like government.
In spite of the great shift on public opinion, why were the animal lab deaths and kills going way up? What does that tell you about the quality of the campaigns that were being run?
I want to read a little bit from this. This is from August 16th, 2017. PETA says sorry for taking girl's pet chihuahua and putting it down. They say, Zarate alleged PETA operated under a broad policy of euthanizing animals, including healthy ones, because it considers pet ownership to be a form of involuntary bondage. PETA denied the allegations and maintained the incident in 2014 was a terrible mistake. 2 women affiliated with PETA, Victoria Carey and Jennifer Wood, traveled to Accomack County, Virginia, because they said a mobile home park owner asked for help capturing wild dogs and feral cats. The women removed an unattended and unleashed chihuahua named Maya, which was a Christmas present to 9-year-old Cynthia Zarate. Maya was put down later that day, a violation of state law that requires a 5-day grace period. PETA was fined $500 for the violation. A trial had been scheduled for September, during which Zarate's attorneys had planned to question current and former PETA employees about its euthanasia policy. The group later said it would pay the family $49,000 and donate $2,000 to a local branch of the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals to honor Maya. The family had set up to $7 million. Wow. There's one thing that makes me not want to watch a movie more than anything else, and that is when in the movie the bad guy kills a dog. You can make a movie where the villain is kidnapping and mercilessly beating people. And I'm like, oh man, this bad guy. But when you give me a movie where the bad guy shoots a dog, I'm just like, turn it off. And it's because I'm biased. But, I care deeply about humanity, human rights issues, of course. But when it comes to the purity of dogs, the loyalty, the companionship, and the innocence, there's some dogs that are probably evil, don't get me wrong. That really irks me when I see in movies that dogs are a true symbol of loyalty. Are you familiar with Hachiko the dog?
No.
Let me tell you the story about Hachiko the dog.
No, who's it?
So a Japanese professor adopted a Akita puppy, and he named it Hachiko. And I'll give you the simple version because I'm probably going to get some of it wrong. But every day, one day when he was leaving to go to the train station to go to the university, Hachiko breaks out of the yard and follows him and goes with him to the train station and watches him get on the train and leave. When he comes back, Hachiko's waiting for him. And this begins this tradition where every day in the morning, he and Hachiko he would get on the train and Hachiko would see him off, go home, come back around the same time when he knew the professor was coming back, and they'd walk home together. One day when the professor was at the university teaching, he had a stroke and he died. And Hachiko waited at the train station and wouldn't leave. For I think about 10 years, Hachiko would wait at the train station and would not leave. Brings tears to my eyes. They built a statue for Hachiko.
Sitting there waiting for.
And I think March 8th now is Hachiko Day. It's a day celebrating loyalty.
Yeah.
See, I'm cracking up. Dogs are incredible. When you start needlessly killing these animals, you make me very angry.
Yeah.
And so hear my voice when I hear this story. If you did what PETA did to my dog, it would be John Wick times 10. But I'm not talking about being violent and merciless. I'm talking about a reign of legal hellfire by which I would dedicate my life to making sure that you would never operate again.
Yeah.
And I've heard these stories about what PETA does. I am no fan of this.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to sit here and pretend
pets are special. They're not it's not slavery. It's not bondage. I am proud. I adopted two two of the mothers who were breeding the kittens at that USDA lab, that we shut down. I've had dogs are special. Pets are special. It's not bondage. It's you can be abusive to a pet or you can love a pet. And most people love their pets and it's special.